Right, so the first election TV debate happened last night, a head-to-head between Rishi Sunak and Keir Starmer, which narrowly Sunak was judged initially to have come out ahead on. That was the first impression, the initial immediate reaction poll afterwards, despite the fact that neither men actually could lie straight in bed, and even when they did try to give what they claimed to be honest answers, it really didn't matter whether it was honest or not, since they were just allocated only 45 seconds each to respond, meaning the format itself was largely at fault for not giving anyone any real clue about what either man stood for on the various topic questions they were asked about. But for as much as I can go after both men for the dishonest things they said on the night, it was an endlessly repeated claim by Rishi Sunak that has blown up since last night into this morning and carrying on today that not only was a complete fabrication, but he was warned ahead of time to not talk about, and yet it seemed to be all he talked about. Right, so if anyone planned on making last night's TV debate into a bit of a drinking game, having to down a shot every time Keir Starmer, for example, happened to mention he was the son of a toolmaker, son of a nurse, and that he was Director of Public Prosecutions and in charge of the Crown Prosecution Service, you will have been legless by the end of the hour. He was as tedious and repetitive as ever. Drill bit Starmer, a small, boring tool. But equally diminutive in stature and equally, if not more dishonest on the night, as it turned out, was Rishi Sunak, who himself could have been the subject of a drinking game if people realised ahead of time just how many times he was going to bring up a seemingly out-of-nowhere statistic that Keir Starmer's Labour would increase taxes on working people to the tune of £2,000 a year. Well, they'd be half cut too. But more than that, it was a complete fabrication, a total lie, and it is likely in no small part due to Sunak's repeated attacks regarding this that he was deemed to have been, marginally as it was, the winner of the debate in the immediate aftermath. And I've seen several in the mainstream media praise what was blatant dishonesty as good and clever politics, because now everyone is talking about it. Yet few of those praising what Sunak did are equally pointing out it was a lie. If we celebrate dishonesty in politics, then we deserve dishonest politicians, do we not? The stupid thing is, though, the really stupid thing is, though, Starmer has done nothing but lie and lie himself with impunity. All manner of things that Sunak could have quite legitimately had a go at him over, if not for the fact they are on the same page as so much of that, nothing between them, and that also shone out to the public, shone out in the social media responses to the show, the main takeaways being Sunak and Starmer were seemingly equally awful, that Julie Etchingham, the host, couldn't maintain order as they took lumps out of each other, which every question ended up seeming to descend into. Though equally part of that was the format of the programme, not allowing proper detailed answers on questions to be heard. It was crazy, it was stupid. An hour for such an important debate in order to inform the public, for one, simply isn't enough, and for two, the way they presented it was you just didn't get informed about anything in any real detail at all. But on the other hand, more than an hour of just these two is frankly more than some people can bear to countenance. Anyway, to this claim that Sunak came out with, a £2,000 tax rise for the public if they vote Labour. That's a claim that will stick, that will horrify people. Frankly, it will terrify people who are barely making ends meet, too many unable to even do that anymore, as we all know all too well. Now, one Tory making a lot of this issue that Sunak repeatedly brought up following the debate was the Energy Secretary Claire, clearly seemingly having been briefed to really sell this point, this complete lie, to really drum it into the public psyche so it's stuck, as she has repeatedly stated both last night, immediately after the show, and this morning on the media rounds, that independent civil servants in the Treasury came up with this figure for Labour's plans. And even when confronted with the fact that this was not true, as happened this morning on Good Morning Britain, she still trotted out lines like, well, I thought it was very telling that 10 times Keir Starmer refused to rule this out. Well, rule what out? You've made it up. And we have proof of this because a letter to Shadow Chief Secretary to the Treasury, Labour MP Darren Jones, from the Permanent Secretary to the Treasury, so that's their top civil servant, a chap called James Bowler, a guy who you would imagine would have been involved in these costings if, like Sunak had said, they were the ones costing Labour's policy and had highlighted this £2,000 tax rise. He would know about it, surely. Yet this is what he wrote. Dear Darren, Opposition Costings. thank you for your letter dated 24th of May regarding the presentation of opposition policy costings. As you will be aware, when costing the policies of opposition parties, HM Treasury and the wider civil service follow established guidance set out in the Directory of Civil Service Guidance. As per this guidance, the costings produced by HM Treasury and the wider civil service are published on the gov.uk website. As you would expect, civil servants were not involved in the production or presentation of the Conservative Party's document Labour Tax Rises, or in the calculation of the total figure used. In your letter, you highlight that the £38 billion figure used in the Conservative Party's publication includes costs beyond those provided by the civil service and published online by HM Treasury. I agree that any costings derived from other sources or produced by other organisations should not be presented as having been produced by the civil service. I have reminded ministers and advisers that that should be the case. That was sent out by head civil servant to the Treasury James Bowler to Labour MP Darren Jones on the 3rd of June, the day before the TV debate. Bowler said he had reminded ministers of the fact that civil servants did not produce these figures. Yet that is the claim Sunak and Coutinho have repeated with willful abandon, it seems, when the truth of the matter is that it was Tory employees, Conservative Special Advisers, SPADs, that had put it together. Despite the Treasury explicitly stating that attribution of these figures should not be made to them, it has happened anyway to give legitimacy to completely false claims and happened repeatedly to drum these lies into the heads of voters. Now, the other point raised is the £38 billion figure, which breaks down to a tax rise of £2,000 on working class households. Also includes figures not included on the gov.uk website. So in other words, figures that Labour have not submitted. Are these Labour omissions or just numbers the Tories have made up from elsewhere? We don't know, but the fact they've attributed all workings to the civil service and the Treasury implies the Tories are either making these numbers up or have come by them in some ill-gotten way because they had nothing to do, the civil servants had nothing to do with these calculations. Sunak, seemingly in his absolute desperation, has made up a pack of lies, spread them liberally on live TV, and they now deserve to come back to bite him. When he's asked in a future TV debate or in the media rounds or any other interviews he might be doing in the meantime, where the additional numbers come from, and we want to see the full workings. As I said before, though, with all the lines we know Keir Starmer's told himself, to just make something up is just ridiculous and so totally unnecessary. But it's that old, whoever is more trusted on the economy wins the election belief thing again, I presume is why this has come about. And Sunak wants to be more trusted on the economy, despite it flatlining broadly for years now, briefly dipping into recession not all that long ago, because he does nothing to actually promote growth. For the economy to grow, to prosper, money has to do work. And for it to work, it must be used, it must be spent. And lining the pockets of the rich time after time, who never spend it, they just hoard it, means the money is doing nothing. The single biggest thing that can be done to promote growth and promote a healthy economy again right now would be a wealth tax to get that money back into active use again and working again. Neither party will do this, though, so they'll both fail economically. However, I've now digressed. For as much as Sunak has laid himself open here, and for as much as Starmer did eventually get a word in to say this was all total garbage, he said something else about this, showing he's equally dishonest to Sunak. And when it came to this, he really didn't have to be. Yeah, I bet he wants Sunak to answer that too, because Sunak will be thinking, hang on a minute, what company is he talking about here? My SPAD's put these figures together, what is he on about? Equally, as it panned to Sunak as Starmer brought up this company that he alleges put these figures together for him, he looked like a deer caught in headlights thinking, oh shit, where's he going with this? I made all that stuff up, what's he doing? What company? And the short answer is, the only way anything Starmer actually just said there can possibly make sense is if he stood there lying through his teeth in response to the lies Sunak had told just before. What company? It's a very good question. What company put these figures together, Keith? What company is saying that Labour's figures are now better than the Tories? There isn't one, unless he's mistaken about the source of the Tories' figures. Perhaps he knows where their additional figures come from. But they still didn't make final calculations. It came out on Newsnight last night that Tory SPADs came out with this final figure that the Tories were using. And Labour knew a day ahead, thanks to that letter to Darren Jones, that the Tories' document that there was no sign-off from the civil service and the Treasury on this. Besides, if there is another company involved, as Starmer is implying, why are the Tories saying it was the civil service in which case? An unknown company that Starmer might well be making up, a civil service who wasn't involved but the Tories claim were, and the media saying it was Tory spads, not the civil service or another company. A company which, of course, according to Starmer, favours Labour's figures over the Tories, but which may not even exist either. What is this company? Starmer needs to be asked that. I can find no proof to back up Starmer's claim here. Happy to be corrected, but I can't find it. So on the face of it, he's lying about being lied about by Sunak. Your future Prime Minister, folks, one of these two awful men, both liars. Unless the entire country suddenly has an epiphany and rejects both of them, but let's be realistic, that really isn't going to happen. Really, though, if you're going to vote for one of these two parties, ask yourself really, really hard first to justify to yourself exactly why you think voting for that person or that party is better than the alternative or any of the other smaller parties which are equally valid alternatives. Meanwhile, Keir Starmer, fearing that someone halfway competent in a live TV debate will actually target the lies he has been saying, is now running away from debating seemingly anyone other than Rishi Sunak, already pulling out of a 7-way debate scheduled for next week and facing being empty-chaired in it, which is exactly what should be done to him. But will Sunak now weasel out as well, given he's now got this big fat whopper of a lie to deal with that will be coming for him then as well? Check out this video recommendation for the details of that one though, and I'll hopefully catch you on the next video. Cheers, folks.